Hello, everyone, and welcome. We're live for another Masterclass session. Today, we're going to be completing this isometric dungeon that we started last month. That means complete with a general theme, lore, and all that nitty-gritty details. So we've got a lot to do today. We're going to be completing this map, and I'm going to start with the general overall theme that I kind of created. So like a narrative hook, and we'll go over to the hamburger menu, and I'll go into the edit map details, and we'll kind of go over that. Hey Alice, welcome. So I'm calling this dungeon the Reliquary of Daedrus, and it's buried beneath the crumbling ruins of a long forgotten empire of Aureus. It lies this reliquary, which a reliquary is like something that like holds like a spirit or something like that. Hey Desiree and Jonathan Frost, glad that you are all here. I'm excited about that. So this is a forsaken sanctum. It was once revered. There was once a revered sorcerer knight who sought immortality through forbidden magics, through unusual and sometimes cruel means. Daedrus indeed attained immortality, but at a terrible price. So this is kind of like the general theme. And what I'm doing with this narrative is I want to show a good man's descent into madness and then turning into kind of like a bad person. And that fall is kind of a fun narrative hook that players can kind of see as it kind of unfolds. And I'm going to do that by adding in a series of journal entries, kind of tropey, but it kind of works, of journal entries of their kind of reasoning from going from what they were until what they end up becoming. And I think that's a good way to kind of build up tension in the narrative, and for something for your players to kind of look forward to, because it's always the suspense, like the fall is coming, and that suspense before that fall is what makes it so intriguing and kind of ties you in. So we're going to have the players explore these haunted halls of the Forgotten Reliquary. They're going to fight against horrific creatures. They're going to solve unique puzzles, and they're going to uncover the tragic story of Daedrus the Grey. So it's a tragedy. Hey, first-time chatter, glad that you're here. So that's going to be that first kind of step. So you're going to get the general idea of the general theme. You're going to uncover this story. I've also went ahead and put notes for each room. And then that way I kind of have a small little blurb that describes the room. And then that way I know what kind of details and what kind of narrative elements to put in it. So that first room is the title, the Vestibule. If you're not sure what a vestibule is, it is like the beginning or the entranceway into like a cathedral. And usually only people of a lower caste were generally allowed within that vestibule. And so what the vestibule is basically the first chamber, basically. And so I'm going to use that name. It's a crumbled stone archway that marks the threshold into the reliquary. It's flanked by the statue of an armored warrior wielding a spear and a shield, as you can kind of see in the picture when I remove this. These strange glyphs hum faintly, warning intruders of the curse below. The air is thick with dust and decay. The statues flicker with this unnatural green flame. So there's the blurb, and then after the blurb, I'll put down a little list in numbered format within there, kind of giving me some key things that I want to make sure that I put into the room that I don't forget about. So some key ones are the green eyes on the statue, which I've mentioned up here, and there's also torn up journal that's kind of having these missed pages. So within the first room, you're going to kind of get the story set by setting the stage by adding a journal. It's missing pages. And then as we kind of go through each room throughout the dungeon, they're going to find a new journal page that kind of uncovers this backstory until you get to this main boss room where you'll actually fight the character in which you've been reading their journal entries, kind of leading up to that. So I think that's the overall theme of it. And I already added the details in here, at least one of them, the green lights off camera. And so what I'll do is I'll just throw in a book with torn pages, and I'll have to go to Fantasy Battle Maps because there aren't any books in Fantasy Regional, but Fantasy Battle Map works just fine. So we're going to open it up. I'm going to look for like a tattered book. And you can see here, if I just go to expand all assets, I'll be able to see which ones are tattered. I kind of like this one right here. Looks okay. It's rather tattered. This one, it's got some broken up to it. I kind of like this one too. Let's go with maybe the brown color. I think I like that the most. And I'll scale it down. And I'm going to use some page that I have over here as a scale. So it's about the same size of the book there. And then I can go in and then put it somewhere in here. And I think what I'll do is I'll put it at the base of the statue, because the statue is so imposing compared to everything else in the room. It's like your players are going to be drawn towards the statue because it's a humanoid-like figure against all this kind of like structure. And so that will draw the player's gaze. And so putting that journal entry at the base is a good place to put it. And what I'll also do is maybe just bring the brightness down a little bit. It's probably a little too bright. So I'll just go to color, bring the brightness down. And now I have the book and the glowing eyes. And so this room is now complete. I don't really need to add any more details. I think what is here is good. If you wanted to, you could throw in a couple more pages, maybe some torn pages or something, kind of creating a trail, kind of leading that way. But I'm not going to do that because I really am using these individual pages as like actual journal entries. And the more pages that I have on the map, that means the more journal entries I'll have to type up in the notes. So to keep the amount of work down, I'm only going to add a couple pages here at a time. I've already added a couple pages, and I'm not going to read them all because I don't like to add too much dialogue. I don't want the players to get drowned in dialogue. So let's just go on to that next room. Here, this first room is complete. And what I'm going to do is something different than what I normally do. Normally, I just start the bones of a room and then go to the next room and then the bones and then to the next room. And what I'm going to do this time is I'm going to train myself to actually complete the room from beginning to end. So before I am allowed to move on to the next room, I'm going to complete the room I'm already in. And then this will also help me to kind of set a standard that the other rooms should be at. That should be at the same level of detail that this room, these other rooms are at. And there should be no exceptions to that rule. So now I'll go in here and you'll notice that I do have a journal entry here. I'm not going to read all this because this is a bit. I will give a warning. Players don't like when they have to read like a novella of dialogue or text and like journal entries or letters or stuff like that. So I try not to add too much. So this first journal entry is a little bit longer. And then what I'll do is the next couple after this will be shorter. And what this journal entry will do is kind of set the stage and the narrative for the first beginning days of this person's descent into kind of like madness, into self-grandeur. And you get to watch their fall from each journal entry until we get to that boss room. Again, it's that narrative, it's that plot hook. So details on the room. This room is called Squire's Rest. It was once a serene chamber lined with wooden bunks. Now it's in ruin. Here, Daedrus Squires, these are people who trained to work with him. They kind of slept here, trained here. There's like a faded tapestry that still clings to the far wall, depicting like a victorious Daedrus wielding a burning sword over a horde of fallen beasts. Hidden within a hollow pillar is like a journal page. So I'll put a fallen pillar in here, then I'll put like a journal page right next to it. And it's evidence of Daedrus' descent into madness. The door to the next chamber is locked, and there is the hint of a mechanism to the door. And so maybe there is a way to open it. So now they have the blurb, I can now dissect from the blurb what things I need to add to the rooms. So I'm going to add a locked door with a mechanism. I'm going to add ruined beds with rubble to kind of show that it was once a place where you could kind of sleep and train. And then I also wanted to show hints of the puzzle itself. So let's start with the first one, the locked door and mechanism. And what works really well for doors is just to use these metal gates. And I'm going to place it just right here to kind of, I know that it kind of blocks the walkway, but I want it to do that, right? I'm trying to implicate to the players that this is a locked space, so your players can't move forward. So that's the first step, is adding in the exit door that can only be opened through solving a puzzle. The next step is I'll want to go in and maybe have this hint of a mechanism. And so what's helpful is to like maybe use some gears from the fantasy battle map style. And I'll just create these gears. I'll desaturate them, bring the brightness down, and I'll also kind of rotate them a little bit so that way the gears look like they're a little more kind of flush with the door. And then I can go in and add a couple more gears. I'll add one here, and then I'll add a smaller one right here like this. So now there's an obvious implication that there is something to this door that needs to be opened. And so the puzzle is kind of there. And what I've also done is I've kind of made hints that the statues play a kind of a role in opening that door. Now, when I'm putting together a puzzle, I try not to make it so complex that it confuses the players. Like, a complex puzzle always sounds great in your head, but when the other players come to try to figure it out, it's not the same feeling, right? It's not as obvious to them as it is to you who created it. So try not to overcomplicate your puzzle. Have them be complex enough to where it's not where the first person figures it out right away, but add enough challenge to it to where it's also not too easy. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some poles to these statues, and these statues have to be rotated, and it needs the team or your adventurer's help. So all of them have to work together to kind of rotate these statues that are on pedestals, and in a certain arrangement of directions the statues are facing in will actually cause the door to open. And what you can do is you can add a clue in the note, or you can have it be simple, like maybe there's some symbols on the ground that kind of show which statue is supposed to face in either direction. All of that is possible. So what I'll do is I'm going to use a pole. And what I want to do is I want to imply to the players that if you want to move the statue, you can. You have to grab this pole right here, and then your players have to pull and rotate it, and it will cause the statue to rotate in different directions. And just make sure that when you put the pole there, make sure that the face on that right side is facing outward. If it's facing this way, the direction is going to be off, right? So make sure that that face at the top of that pole is facing the right way. And I'm going to do it again on this one right here, because both statues need to be rotated in the proper direction. The other thing that I noticed that I wanted to put in there is that this was a bunk or a training spot. And so maybe what we want to add in is some beds. And what I'll use is these docks right here. These docks right here will work perfect as a bed frame. These will work just fine. You have to kind of stretch your imagination a little bit. And what I'll do is I'll place them like this, where they're kind of rotated and they're kind of broken up. So we'll place some bunks here. Let's maybe put one right here. Let's put another one like here, maybe underneath this one. And then let's maybe place one right here like this, kind of facing this way. And what I'm also doing is there's a lot of gray in here. And so I'm adding in these brown, warmer colors, and they just look a lot nicer. And so I'm also going to place some like right here. And then maybe let's place one more. Let's see here. I might want to move one right to here. No, I think it should be just good. This right here should work good. So add that. And then, of course, I'm also going to add in some wood as well. And let's see here. We could use, let's see here. I think there's this like slivered like wood. Here it is right here. This work fine. And I want to make sure that it's kind of the same brown color as those bunks. So I'll just bring the brightness down a little bit. I'll put it up a layer. And then let's just place some of that like this, kind of going down like this. That way there's some debris kind of floating around. This is a kind of a collapsed room a little bit, or part of it's collapsed. So I'll just kind of place some wood pieces, put some leaning up against here. I don't want to put anything obstructing the statue. So I'll kind of place one over here. I'm kind of facing, they're all kind of pointing in towards the center of the circle here. That's kind of helpful. Let's put one there, one pointing in that way. Let's rotate it this way. Let's bring it down a layer so it's behind it, overlap there. In fact, you know what? We're going to remove some of this pillar right here. I'll show you a cool trick on how to remove this pillar, and then you can put like a black color on top of it. Let's do that real quick. Let's go to the shape tool. I'm going to go to paint. I'm going to choose fill, and I want to go with clipping mask. And I'm just going to hide some of this pillar like this with a clipping mask. You might have to push it up a layer. There you go. So I'm pushing this clipping mask. I'm going to put it like this. I'm going to hide some of that pillar. Oopsie, let's get the clipping mask part. There we go. Right here, I'm going to copy paste it. Let's put a little bit more of the clipping mask down here. And then what I'll do next, let's see here. Is this set to blur? Let me double check. Let's turn the blur off. There we go. I'm going to make sure it's clear. And then what I'll do here is I'll go in and I'm going to take fill, color black. I'm going to take this circle shape like this. Just place it like this and then place it right on top like that. And now I have this kind of cut off pillar, and it should allow for more movement in that area because it won't be blocking the way. So kind of an interesting way to kind of allow for more movement, because what's important for me when making these kind of maps is that they're functional. Like, the artistic thing is nice, but it also needs to be functional. Like, what's the point of making a map if you can't really use it for something? And technically this is an isometric dungeon. It's a battle map for those of you who like isometric. And so again, you kind of have to hide some of these kind of things if you want to make it more practical. And I'll just follow that same logic. What I'll do is I'll grab the clipping mask. I'm going to lock this real quick so I don't accidentally select it. I'm going to copy, paste, put it again, like right here. Actually, I think I want to do the blurred version. I'm going to place it just right here like this. I'm going to make sure that it kind of hides some of the floor like this. And then I can grab that black pillar and just kind of place it right on top. And then I'll rotate it to make sure it's facing the right direction. And now it's, again, not blocking the way for your movement. So kind of some easy stuff. I'm going to quickly save, and then we're going to go ahead and add in the final details in here. And then we'll move on to that next room. I just want to make sure that there's enough detail in each room to kind of give the necessary components to pull the narrative forward. Okay, let me go ahead and check the note again to make sure that I got everything. So I'll go ahead and click the note. I think there's some ruined beds, the puzzles, I've done that, and I've done the locked door mechanism. I think that's it. The other thing that you could probably put in here is just to add in some more rubble texture and stuff. And so what I'll end up doing is just go Fantasy Battle Maps, type in rubble, and you'll see there's some nice rubble that's got both that warm brown color and that gray texture. What I'll do is I'll apply it to the canvas just to see where my scale is at. And it seems a little large, so let's bring the scale down a little bit. So advanced settings, bring the scale down. You'll see that it's got a preview to it. It looks a little lighter than the stone that rubble that I've already got. So I'll bring the brightness down a little bit. And then I'll just place that rubble right at the base of things. So add a little bit of this rubble here, a little bit of rubble here. And this way we'll kind of get some nice brownish colors. And let's put some right behind the pillar so that it really shows that there is this overlap. The overlap is how you create depth, right? So now we have these nice warm brown colors in there. And then we have light to kind of indicate that, hey, this is how you move, that one of these statues needs to be lit up. And then I'm going to make the wood of these poles just a little bit darker to kind of matching with the same wooden color. There we go. And so I think everything is kind of put together. So once these switches, or once these statues have been rotated in the right direction, or in the right combination of directions, it will allow for the door to open up, and then you'll be able to move on to the next section. So I think everything in this room is good. I've made sure that the visibility is good. There's nothing kind of obstructing players' movement. There's things to catch the eye. I've added the theme to the room, the puzzle. We have the journal entry, and then we have that locked door. So let's go ahead and move into this next room. Next chamber, I'm going to go ahead and select it. So this is called Gertinuv's Lair. It's basically like a spider. And the way that I kind of wrote it out was, once it was a storage vault, and now it's infested with these foul, warren arachnids. They're pale, chitinous creatures that skitter across webs thick as a man's arm. There's a mutated broodmother that lurks in the shadows of the ceilings. And there's all these eggs that they can hatch within moments, and then beneath the silk-wrapped corpses may lie some forgotten treasures left behind by fallen adventurers who died in here. And so that's always kind of a nice little boon. Whenever I put in a combat, I try to make sure to include some kind of reward, because they're going to fight this giant spider on top of all of their offspring, and that's going to be a tough fight. And so I want to make sure that I reward my players, and so I'm going to include some really nice equipment and maybe some items that they can collect off of the people that kind of fell. And even though those items didn't save them for this fight, it might be able to help your players in the next one. So the things that I want to include are green glowing eggs, because right now I think I have a purple color that kind of gives it this purple eerie color in that dungeon. And a good complementary color to that is green. So we're going to have green glowing eggs. And then I want to show that some of the eggs have already been broken open. So I'll have some broken eggs with pools of embryonic fluid that came out of it. And then I also want to have some spun corpses be in the webs as well to kind of show like, hey, your players can cut those corpses free from the web, and then they can cut them open, cut open all of the webs, and then they can go get the items that they've been kind of, or they're on the ground somewhere. I'm not sure however way that you want to do it, but that's the general idea. So as you can see, I have that purple color. So I'll start with the eggs that haven't hatched first. I'm just going to go to the Inkarnate tag, so that, because I'm just going to type in egg, and there's a specific green egg that's in, I think it's a watercolor style. And so I'll type in egg. You'll see there's these green monster eggs right here. These are perfect. And so what I'll do is I'm going to scale how big the egg is against this page right here. I want to make sure that the egg is big enough to where it's like, okay, these spiders aren't tiny, but they're also not super massive. So this is the offspring. And so I'll bring the scale down a little bit more, and I'll place a couple in here. Let's place maybe a rounded one kind of down. Let's put one over here. And then I always like to put like a cluster of them. So let's put a cluster of different sizes together with my rule of 3 that always confuses people. Let's also put one right in front here. Let's add another one, a smaller one right here. And then let's add another one right here. What I want to do is I don't want them to be perfectly equidistant from each other. So I want to make sure to add some ones that are here and there on the sides. There we go. Let's add one here. I don't think these are necessarily all equidistant from each other, but so far they look okay. So we have that ones. And then I also want to have eggs that have kind of broken up. So there's these ones right here that are broken from the same style. And I'll just bring the saturation up so I can easily find that green color. Then I can bring the saturation back down. And then what I'll do is I'll place these more at the base. And I'll bring them up a layer. Let's put one here. Let's put the cracked side right there. And then let's put another cracked one leaning here. Let's flip it so that's not all the same, because it's only 2 of the same stamp here. So I don't want to overdo it. So let's put one more right here. And then from there, I can go in and type in blood. I think this is going to work good. This kind of pooling right here works a little better for what I want to do. And of course, I'm just going to change that hue to get that green color. And then I'll change the blend mode to fit the kind of greener color that I want. I kind of like color dodge. It kind of doesn't show very well, but we can go through soft light. We'll go through the different ones, see which one works best. I kind of like that one. I think that kind of looks good. It's kind of hard to see. Let's do screen. I think that looks good. So we'll add some kind of green goo here, right underneath wherever the egg has kind of hatched. We'll have this one look like it's kind of oozing out. And we'll put another one right here, like this. There we go. Oopsie, I want to put it behind the pillar. There we go. Okay, so now we have some green goo. I think that works well with that color palette. And then that next thing is we want to add some corpses inside of the web. So we could type in corpse, I think. Okay. Let's see here. There should be some web corpses in here. I know they're in here. For some reason I'm having a hard time finding them. Let's look up web instead, and maybe they're there. I'm not sure. Let's take a look. Nope. Not seeing it. Maybe wrapped? I can't seem to recall where these are actually. Let's see here. Oh, here we go. Spider victims. That's it. Perfect. Okay. And from here, I'm obviously going to want to set the scale right. So I'm going to use this piece of paper right here as a scale to make sure that I got that right. And then I'll go ahead and place these corpses. I'll just bring it down one more, actually. And I'll just put these corpses right up in here. Let's place one there. Let's place another one, maybe leaning up against here like this. Let's place another one kind of like this. Let's place another one maybe leaning up against here, like this. There we go. Now we have these kind of very clear, like, kind of corpses hanging out in the spiders. Yeah. Okay, there we go. Let's take a step back and look at it. Yeah, I think that's about where I kind of want it. Now, you don't have to add in, like, an actual creature if you don't want to, but for fun, I'm going to throw in an actual spider that kind of is drooping down from the bottom, or kind of coming down from the top, like this. But I think I might have to push some of these down a layer. Let's see here. Is the web at 5? Yeah, it is. That's what I thought. Okay. We'll have to take all the spider webs. I'll just select one of them, and then you can go select all from this set, and I'll bring them down a layer. And then what I'll do is I'll also select these corpses. I'm going to select all of them, and I'm going to desaturate them. Bring the brightness up a little bit more to kind of fit with the web. Here we go. And then I'll put the spider kind of coming down from the top. But first I want to bring these down a layer as well. There we go. And you can add this kind of spider that's coming down like this if you want to. If you don't want to do that, you don't have to, because I understand that obviously if a monster token is a monster token, you want it to be able to move around. You don't want it to be stationary, but you could have like a little spider coming down from the ceiling. It was part of the details. That's up to you. I'm going to go ahead and save it. I'm going to go quickly look over the notes again and see if there's anything else that I want to add in here. Like I could throw down some weapons. I did mention equipment. So one thing I could obviously do is throw down some weapons like sword, a shield, anything that might be good, maybe boxes or something that kind of represents like, hey, you're able to get some kind of reward for finishing these creatures. So let's add in some weapons here. I think I'll start with some simple stuff, like maybe just a sword that's kind of sticking out of the dirt there. We could have maybe, let's see here, we could throw in like some kind of spear or some kind of staff. We can put that in somewhere. Maybe it's leaning up against here like this. Or maybe we can throw in a dagger on the ground. You know, it doesn't have to be anything special, but just kind of throw it down so that way at least the players get the idea that, hey, there's kind of booty around here. Just throwing some simple stuff down like that. Okay, let's kind of go into the next one. And what I normally do for hallways like this, I know I kind of mentioned in the last stream, is I like to throw down these little traps. And in the first stream, I mentioned that some people might be confused, like, why would I make the trap visible? Then the players can avoid it. Actually, having a trap visible is helpful to you because you can use it to your advantage when you're maybe fighting a monster. So what I had mentioned the last one was that maybe one of the spiders, you get overwhelmed and your players are forced into retreat. And so they jump over the spikes in retreat, but then the spiders get impaled by the spikes at the last minute right after your players jump over it. So using traps to, using the environment to your advantage against enemies, especially enemies of number, right? Let's say there's a lot of them and they're chasing you and they're bottlenecking into this corridor or this hallway right here. And so that gives you the advantage where numbers no longer has the advantage. And so I like to add things like traps and stuff in these hallways, just in case you're being tailed by monsters and you can get them with these traps. It's something that your players can look for, try to avoid. It adds some more challenge to it. So it's always nice things to kind of add traps in here. You can also add in like maybe a random chest or throw in a note or a letter or whatever. That way your players aren't just bored with movement going inside of these hallways and they're trying to get to this other room. So throwing in little tiny things like that in the hallways is a great way to keep your players engaged and not bored with movement. Let's go over to the note and move on to this next one. And you can see I have a note in here, so I added a note. You can see how long this one is. They're pretty long. I'll have to cut these down a little bit, but there is another page of the journal here, which is going to help propel the story forward. And then here, this is called Daedrus Drop. It's just basically a well. It's a vertical shaft that plunges into these dungeon's depths. Golden chains and suspended platforms. All this stuff allowed for access, but now it's like a treacherous climb or a fall to go down it. At the bottom lies like a blood-stained chamber filled with foul sewer water and corpses, reeks of death. So there's not much that's going to be happening in here. And the reason why is because I didn't want to overwhelm the players after doing one puzzle and then doing this kind of difficult fight with spiders. And in this next room, I wanted it be a room where it would give them to rest. They don't have to worry about the tension of going into combat again or solving some complex puzzle. This room is more focused on pushing the story or the storyline forward. That's pretty much what this room is for. And so there are 3 things that I want to add in here. That journal entry, which you saw I already added. The collapsed shaft, which is basically the well. You won't be able to see that shaft, but at least it's there. But I do want to add a narrative plot hook in this room. And what it is your players keep hearing whispers from the well. And they're going to uncover an NPC who's actually holding on to the chain and doesn't really have a way to kind of get out. And so they're kind of asking for help. And then you're going to find out that they're possibly maybe one of the squires that maybe worked with Daedrus, and that they took maybe a partial transformation from whatever bad happened to Daedrus. And so maybe they can kind of lead you forward in the next step. And what I'll actually do is maybe even add in like a little chase scene. So they'll get out, you'll chat with them. They have some important information, but they kind of skitter off. And so you'll chase off after them into this next room. So it's kind of another plot thing to add in. So I'll move over into this next room. I've got the paper, I've got the well, and I've got the concept that this Squire is going to create like a kind of a chase scene into this next room. Let's go into the next room because there isn't much to do in that one. And I'm going to create this collapsed shaft. It was once an elevator that descended deeper down into the earth. Now it's kind of a tomb of splintered beams and rubble. Whatever was below has been sealed off from the caverns above. So one, we want to add like a shaft that's going to act as like our wall. I'm going to add in traps because I want players to kind of, once they go chasing after this person, a bunch of creatures are probably going to come out from the shadows, come out from the wood and the splinters and go into attack the players. But what I'll do with this combat is that I'm not going to make it as difficult as the last battle. I'm going to make it a little bit easier. So it's like mostly one hit kills. Most of your players should be able to take these people out, and it should make it easier. I don't have any thoughts on the VTT, how you would do dynamic lighting, but that's a cool idea and a discussion for another time. Good thinking. I like that end early. And then, so what we'll do is I'm just going to create the walls for this first, and I'm going to use poles. Poles work great because it has that second face on it. So you'll notice that I have these poles right here. It has that face, and I'm going to set them up to where these are going to act as kind of the pillars for the walls. So I'll go ahead and bring the brightness down, push one here. This needs to go down a layer right here, and then I'll put another one right here. And these are going to represent my walls. And then I'll turn around and kind of create the next segment of the walls by putting these pieces here. And I'm going to push this up a layer so that this face is in front of it, like this. And then I'll do the same thing. I'm going to do this one. I'll place it here. And then I'm going to push this one up a layer so that it's up above it. And then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to copy paste. Place it down here like this. This one needs to go down. There we go. Okay. Now I've kind of got the walls of the shafts here. So now I can go in and kind of pick a texture that I want to act as the wall. And what I'll probably do is maybe just kind of use already a stone kind of wall texture. And I can kind of use, let's see here. But I want to use one that doesn't have like directionals, a direction in the stone, because we're using isometric. This stone right here in the core, this works great because the stones look more like they're not meant to show like a direction, because this is a fantasy battle map texture. And so to resolve that, I'm going to use this texture. So I'll bring the texture scale down as always. And then I probably want to bring the brightness down. And then I'll go ahead and turn the softness down to 0. And then I'll just kind of go in and just start setting it to the BG layer. And then kind of just fill it in like this to create my wall. I might even want to make it even a little bit darker. I can always do that. But we'll create the first part of the shaft. And what I also like to do is make one part of the wall a little bit darker than the other. And so the way that actually I'm kind of seeing that I can see some of the grid on it. And what I might do instead is actually use a shape for that, so that way the grid doesn't show up on it. So what I'll do instead is I'll use the shape tool, I'll use the pen, I'm going to turn my stroke off, and I'm going to use a texture. I'm going to use this stone one. And what's great is I don't have to do any editing quite yet with it, but I'll go here at the bottom like this, press enter, go to plus, and I'll bring it down a layer all the way down like this, and then I'll change the scale. Let's make it a little bit smaller. Let's also change the brightness, make it a little bit darker. I think that looks good. About there looks okay. And then I'll make another one like this, going across like this, press enter. And I'm going to make this wall a little bit darker than the other wall. So I'll go in and just bring the brightness down a little bit more. And this will kind of show that there is a difference between each wall. So having one darker and one lighter should create this sense of contrast. So this was once the shaft that went down. So that part is complete. And what we can also do is throw in some trap stuff. So what I'll do is take one of the traps I created right here, copy and paste it, and then bring it here. And I want the traps to be visible because I want my players to interact with the traps. So as they're fighting these minions, fighting these creatures that have come out to try to stop you, what you'll have is you'll have some of the environment to your advantage, right? Now, don't forget, they also can use the environment to their advantage by pushing you into those traps, into those spikes. So just make sure that your players try to come up with a strategy that's going to use the environment to their advantage. And there should also be environmental elements that your players can interact with. So, for instance, like maybe I want to throw in like a fallen pillar or something. And what's great about that is that it will give your players something to interact with. Maybe they can't lift it up and use it as a weapon, but they can use it to get the high ground. They can use it to hide behind something if someone casts a long-range spell or uses a projectile weapon. They can use it to push somebody and they can trip and fall over it. Or maybe a spell that lifts it up and throws it at somebody. So having these kind of elements in combat is kind of really helpful to make the battle more dynamic and more interesting. I'll go ahead and put the trap right here. I'll put the pillar right over here. And what I'll do is I'll make it look like the pillar fell down in this corner. And so it's immediately you'll have some cover that you can kind of get right here. And then I'll use that same rubble texture that I did right here. I'm going to place it on the FG layer and put it underneath here. Oopsie, I'm going to make sure my softness is at 100%. And I'll go ahead and place this and kind of place the rubble underneath. Oop, that looks a little too big. I think I need to bring the scale down. There we go. Okay. Oh yeah, much better. And we'll go ahead and put the rubble all along the shaft here, in this corner right here, more rubble. Great, and then we'll add maybe a pillar that hasn't collapsed. So we'll go ahead and put one right here in this corner. I think that should work. There we go. Now you have one pillar there, and we can add another one right here. I think might not be a bad idea. One in each corner. And it shouldn't block too much of where your players can walk around, move around, and look at things. Okay, so we've got the thing for your players to interact with. We've got this here. One thing we might want to do is also add some of this same kind of wooden rubble right here. This is stuff that your players could use. Like, let's say their weapon gets knocked out of their hand. They can pick up one of these sharp splinter-like sticks right here, and they can try to impale the enemy. So having some sticks on the ground and even some of that rubble on the ground, they can use it. Like maybe they get knocked over and then they fall right next to these stones. They can pick up that stone and maybe use it as a last-ditch effort to throw it at their face. It knocks them off guard, giving another player or yourself or another player to come back for an attack. So the environment's going to be a huge deal. I cannot stress the importance of dynamic encounters by making sure that your players can interact with the environment around them. Let's go ahead and add just a couple more wooden pieces. I think what we could do is find this smaller one and then place this in this corner, and that should kind of balance out the room a little bit because you have a lot of emphasis on the left side, the left upper part of the room up here. And so it's kind of heavy and unbalanced. So by throwing in a couple elements on this side, like the pillar and this wooden debris right here, I'm balancing out the room a little bit more. So I think everything should be available here. We've got all the traps. We've got everything put together. And what you could do is you can, if you wanted to show that maybe there was a shaft above, that there's a light source above, you could always put like a light right here, or you could put a light right here to show that there's some kind of shaft above, or you can do what was done here. I generally will take something like this torch right here, and then the torch, and then the light source, and I'll copy and paste it and kind of move it over to here if you wanted to add another light source. I don't generally put a light source in every single room. I think a part of the challenge is the darkness part, so I'm not going to end up putting a light in every room. I don't want every room to be super easy. The darkness gives some challenge to it. So I think this room is complete. We went over all the details for it. I'm not going to add any light sources. I want this room to be dark, and I want it to add to the challenge of this room because it's kind of an easy battle if you can see everything, you can see the traps clearly, you can see all the obstacles that might get in your way or enemy's way, but when you don't, when some players have the ability to see traps, see in the dark, while some don't, or some have a torch or a lantern of some kind, this all kind of adds to the challenge of it. So this room will probably end up being very dark, and I can add darkness in that room by simply using a cloud. So I can take a cloud like this, type it in. I'm going to go inkarnate and look at all the clouds. I'm just going to use these ones. And what you can do is just take a cloud, bring the brightness all the way down, and then you can bring the opacity down, and then I'm going to place it on the very top like this, and then I'm just going to place a bunch like this to make sure that I really capture the darkness of this room. There we go. And I'll go ahead and add enough to where the light kind of comes through here. And then I think that's it. Let's make it a little bit darker on this pillar right here. There we go. And we'll do the same here. We'll add some darkness right here. Okay. And in fact, I'm going to do it to a lot of the rooms. So we'll add some darkness here. I think this room has a lot of light sources in it, so it should be okay. But we should probably put some light inside that chamber, and then let's put a little bit over here, and then this chamber doesn't have a whole lot of light, so we'll go ahead and add that there. Okay, sweet. Okay, so now we have those darker kind of areas. So this is going to add to the challenge of it, and of course, if you feel that the shadows are too much, you can just select the cloud and just bring the opacity down more. It's a nice little way. You can also use the top layer to do this if you want to. There's a lot of different ways that you could do it. I just use those clouds because I can kind of control them more and move them around. All right, so let's go to that next room. And this next one is called the Gauntlet. It's a trap-laden hall. It's a narrow path that once tested the mettle of Daedrus' squires. So there's spinning blades, there's flaming jets, there's this arcane or pressure plates, and it's a challenge for any who enter. Completing the Gauntlet unscathed is a feat worthy of legend. So the things that I want to take from this trap room, this more deadly trap room, is spinning blades, flaming jets, and pressure plates. And I've noticed that we are at 3:43, at least in my time zone, but I'm going to go for this entire, I'm probably going to go over an hour. Maybe this could be an hour or two because I just want to finish this. And then that way we can get a little bit more content out of here. Normally I don't go that long, but for this one we will. Hope no one will mind. So let's go add in spinning blades, flaming jets, and the pressure plates. But first I need to redo the hall a little bit. You'll notice that this isn't really much of a hallway. It's kind of this crooked like tunnel. And so what I'll end up doing is I'm going to go back to the grid with the mask tool. I'm going to go to subtract. And I'm just going to go in and I'm just going to minus these sections right over here like this. And then I can go to add, and I'm going to go ahead and create a thin hallway now. And what I want is I want it to be thin enough to where you can't easily avoid the traps. So I'm going to make sure that I don't have it to be too thick. So you have this nice long hallway here. And then what I want to do is I want to add in a back wall to here where I can add the traps. And there's a couple things that I can kind of do when I'm doing the regional stuff. I can use an actual, oh yeah, here's some, if you haven't seen it yet, here's some of the Classical Empire stuff that's going to be released soon with the 2.0. So you got these really beautiful kind of Greek and Roman kind of inspired art here. And so these are going to be released with our 2.0 that's coming out real soon, like really soon. So I'm excited about this stuff. I'm not going to add it into this map because I want you to be able to clone and edit it when we finish it. So, but you got to see it firsthand here. There's a lot here. There's like 300 plus stamps or something like that. So it's a lot being added to Fantasy Regional, a little overdue. Let's go ahead and add wall. And then you can kind of see this. That's some of the new stuff. Let's expand all the assets. Let's use, let's see here. I think what I'll do is let's use these ones right here. Because these kind of have like holes in the walls. You notice that they have a hole in the wall, and that's going to be like perfect to kind of represent like the trap that comes out. So what I'll end up doing is I'm going to create 2 layers of this. So what I'll end up doing is let's take this one right here, and then I'm going to place this one on top of it. I'm going to put these on the right layer first. There we go. Let's put this one below. Now we have this nice high wall here. I'm going to bring the saturation down, the brightness down. There we go. And I want to bring the scale down to make sure that it's at the right height for how tall the people are. That's about right. We'll bring the scale down a little bit more. There we go. Just want to make sure that it doesn't overlap too much of this chamber right here. So I'm going to group these, create group, copy and paste. I'm going to do it again, copy and paste both of them, place it on here. And then what I'll do is I'll go ahead and line this up. There we go. And now we have this nice gauntlet wall right here, and a series of traps, fire, and things are going to come out of those kind of hole spaces. What I could do is I could actually remove it to where one of them doesn't have traps. So if your players kind of understand the concept that they can actually avoid some of the traps by realizing that some of them don't actually have traps, like these 2 segments where they're going to be standing, this might not have traps here. And so there's some kind of safe spot. You can rely on timing. It could be like an Indiana Jones Temple of Doom type of trap room, whatever it might be. But you do have these traps here now that you can kind of use. What I'll do is I'll throw in some extra elements to it. We'll complete the wall by maybe adding some pillars to the back of it. So I'll put this one here like this. Let's bring the opacity down, or saturation down, sorry. Let's bring the brightness down. There we go. And I can kind of place that one right there, and then place this one right here like that. Okay. So now we have a very distinct type of wall right here with traps. We can have some fire coming out of the things, and we want to also add in some pressure plates. And so what I could do for that is I could use textures to represent like some spots where players have to step on. Let's go to Fantasy Battle Maps real quick, and maybe I can kind of use something from here. There might be some designs that I could use. Let's see here. I kind of like some of these concepts right here, this decorative red floor right here. I think that looks cool. Let's change the brightness, and let's change the scale. I'll make it a little bit smaller so I can kind of get a piece of it, and then I'll make sure to bring the saturation, bring the brightness down, and then I'm going to try real quick just placing it down with the grid. Just take a look at it. You know what? I think I'm going to end up using the shape tool for this instead, because this will probably work better. So let's go into the shape tool. Let's kind of use this same texture here. I'm going to use the grid as a guide, use the pen. Oopsie, that didn't work right. There we go. Use the pen. There we go. Press enter, plus. Oops, I notice I've got a blur on. There we go. Okay. I think that looks cool. Let's go ahead and change the texture scale. Okay, I think that should work. Let's also change the saturation of it, bring the brightness down a little bit. There we go. And then I can go in and kind of create a series of these. copy paste. Let's put a couple here. Let's put one here. There we go. Now we have some stuff on the floor. This can be indication of where the trap might come from, or it might be a safe space, or it might be a pressure plate that activates the trap. All of those things kind of work. So we'll make sure to add those elements in here. Let's also throw in some skeletons and corpses to kind of show that this room is dangerous. I want to implicate to the players that this is a dangerous place. So one way to do that is to throw in some skeletons. And what I'll do is I'll have some of them like maybe leaning up against the rock. And what I'll do is I'll check. I believe there was some skeletons that I had in here. And to make sure that I got the scale right, I'll select this one. Now I got the scale right. Now I can go back over here to this room. And then I can kind of place a couple corpses landing on the ground. Maybe one leaning up against the wall right here. Maybe one crumpled up on the floor because they died right here. Maybe add another one over here. Oh, they just barely made it, just right on the pressure plate right there. Maybe it's activated part of the trap. It makes it even more difficult. There's a trap that's been activated and it can't be deactivated until you move the corpse with a spell or a barbarian or whatever it is you have to use, right? So we'll throw in those. We're also going to throw in some blood because it's a trap room. I would expect a lot of blood, and I'm not going to use the blood from Fantasy Battle Maps. I'll use the watercolor battle map style, and because it's got a little bit nicer blood that I feel. And remember, I've talked about this in the past. If you wanted to show that someone died recently, fresh blood, then you would leave it at 100% opacity. If you wanted to show that there was dried blood that's been there for a while, then you would drop the opacity. So this is what I'll do. I'll take these blood textures here at a lower opacity and just kind of place them around and about. Let's put one right here, like this. Let's put another one over here. Put them right up against here like this. Let's put a couple of blood. Let's put a smack, a little bit of blood over here in this one. I think it should look good. There we go. So now we have the blood in that room to indicate that this is a dangerous location. I think I remember some blades as well with saws on it. So we might want to consider adding some saws on the ground. So we'll type in trap. And I think in Fantasy Battle Maps, there are like these saws right here. These will work out great. I can kind of put them like on the grid right here, and I can kind of have them going back and forth like this. And that way they can kind of represent the trap going back and forth. Now you don't have to keep that there because it's something that's going to be moving, but it will be a reminder to yourself as the DM that there are these bladed traps that are taking place here. And the reason why I've had this be this trap room right here is because this is where the final boss is right here that you'll be facing. And so it's important to add in maybe some kind of challenge before we get to the main boss guy. So I'll also balance these out by putting a blade down here as well. So one down here, one over there. And I'm going to make sure that the blood is on top of the blade as well to kind of show that people kind of died. There we go. So there's some blood on the blades. I think that looks good. Let's add in the torch. So we want to add in some fire or flame. What I'll do is I'll kind of use the one that kind of looks like it juts out a little bit more. I think this one will work good. And what we'll do is we'll place them coming out of some of these holes here. So I'll go ahead and bring the opacity up all the way. Here we go. And I think I'll flip this and then make it look like there's like flame coming out of these holes right here. Now, you don't have to have the flames there when you're actually doing the encounter with your players because likely they won't be able to see that part. So that way there's not this stationary flame, but it is to remind you that, hey, that's a part of the traps. The blades on the ground that are rotating back and forth, as well as the flames coming out of the walls. So this is a full-on gauntlet of traps. And what you can also do is... But sometimes what you can do is that you can add in some minor minions in here, and then you can use them as shields against the traps. So sometimes what I'll do is the combat that took place in this darker room, you get chased after. That's perfect. Draw them towards the gauntlet, and then start grabbing their bodies and then pushing them into the trap. So you can kind of skateboard or surf your way through the gauntlet on top of those enemies. It's also a great thing to add in there. You'll be focusing more on using them as shields than actually partaking in a ton of combat here. So maybe just one or two that you can kind of use as a shield to help you in this gauntlet of a room. Okay, let's go ahead and save it. We've got a lot of changes here. And we're just going to go over the allotted time because I just want to finish this. I'm sure none of you are going to complain spending a little more time on a map. I don't think anyone's going to mind. I kind of like where the gauntlet is kind of going. One thing I might do is kind of throw in maybe some of this. It's kind of an imbalance. There's nothing on this side of the wall here. And so what I will do is probably just throw in some of these right here to kind of create the other part of the wall. And because right now it's a really imbalanced room where you can only see one side of the wall for the functional purpose, but adding in these kind of little pieces right here should kind of break up the room. You can even stack some on top of each other like this. I'm going to stack it over here so it doesn't block too much of the player movement, and I'll stack another one right here. You can stack a whole bunch of them to kind of create this like stacked effect, and then you'll end up making these parts of it black. So I'll kind of give you an example of what I mean by that. So I can go in right here, place these pieces, I'm stacking them on top of each other. And then I can go in and then I can take this black fill for the shape tool, and then I can go in like this and kind of create the black silhouette. It's going to be this part of the wall. So go in here, place one here, here. And you're only going to show on the face of the wall that's facing towards us. And so I'll go like this. There we go. And then I'm going to zoom out, press enter, press plus, and you're going to see that you can kind of see the shape of the wall here. And that will kind of balance out this side of the wall. So there's a little more artistic balance to it, because right now there isn't a whole lot of balance. And I can do the same thing here. I'm going to copy and paste, put another one here, and put another one on top of this one, right on top of there. And then I'll just do the same thing. I'm going to go in like this. A nice little trick to kind of make the walls seem more realistic. Add the plus there. There you go. And now you kind of have those sections. And now it kind of filled out more. And what I'll do is I'll continue adding maybe some slivers and pieces of wood kind of leading into this next spot right here. And then what I should do is, because I have some light sources there from those flames, it probably doesn't hurt to throw on some light sources right where the flame is. You can use that one or you can use the orange one. I think the orange one will probably work better. And then I'll bring the opacity down if this flame is a little bit smaller. And then another flame right here. And so now you have this kind of flame-ridden room right here that kind of leads into this boss room here. So we'll quickly save it, and then we'll move on to that next room. I think I got all the details here. One thing that I could put in here is maybe some fallen weapons on the ground, like maybe a sword sticking out of the ground, some shields, stuff like that. Those are nice little details that you can throw in there. But I think I might add just a little bit more, I think, to the top of the wall here to make it more intriguing, like maybe adding in a statue or maybe throwing something in there to make it more interesting, because the wall seems kind of bare right now. So what I might end up doing is maybe like throw like a statue on top, kind of like this. Saturation, bring the brightness down. Oops, I noticed my opacity is not right. There we go. And then now we kind of added this little statue right here that kind of makes it looks like it's this mouth kind of leading in the direction that you're supposed to kind of go in. It adds a little bit more detail to it. And you can always throw in little extra details, like maybe throwing in more of these kind of things on top of it, so I can bring the brightness up a little bit. And then I can kind of create like, oopsie, let me put some on here real quick. Go up a layer, and then I can kind of place these along here, kind of like this. And I can make it uneven, just make it different. And then that should add a little bit more character and a little bit more detail to it. There we go. Okay. And then we'll add one on top. Ooh, I think that should be good right there. There we go. I think that kind of overall puts it together. I think that looks good. You could also add some obstructions that kind of block the way to get around. So I can throw in a couple right here, maybe put one right here. Let's go down a layer. Put one right here. I'll bring the brightness down a little bit so it kind of matches with the last one. There we go. So now there's some obstructions as well. I don't want to make sure that they're not obstructing the path of the blade, so I'll make it a little bit smaller. Same thing with this one, a little bit smaller. There we go. Now it shouldn't get in the way of the blades going back and forth, and it creates something that your players are going to bump into. They could trip over, or if there's anyone chasing your players, they might trip and fall and then get caught in the trap. So I think overall this kind of puts it kind of together. The other thing that I might want to do is show that the room is vaulted. It's kind of tall. So I'll take those same black pillar things that I used right here and just put it right on top of this. And this will kind of represent that there's a pillar there going up even higher to kind of show that the room is vaulted. So I think overall that room kind of comes together. You have this trap-laden room here. I don't think I need to add a whole lot of shadows with clouds here. I'll bring the opacity down on the cloud a little bit, put it right here, because this the shadow from, there's light from that flame there, so I'll add a little shadow right here. Kind of have it going this way. There we go. Okay. It's coming together. Overall, I kind of like this room. I like the flame, I like the way it's turning out. I'm going to quickly save, and then let's go work on this boss room. So far, I'm kind of happy with the way that it's kind of turning out. I always try to mix up between puzzles, being involved in the narration, the narrative, the story, and all this other stuff. So I kind of try to mix all of these things so that your players aren't bored to death. Okay, so let's go into that next room. We're going to go look it up right here. This is going to be the heart of the Reliquary, and that's what I think I'll call the room, the heart of the Reliquary. I'll probably change the name from boss room to heart of the Reliquary. Here, Daedrus' soul was sundered and bound into a colossal wraith-forged golem made out of obsidian and bone. The chamber kind of pulses with this raw, kind of chaotic, like fell magic, because Daedrus kind of mixed with unnatural forces to try to attain this kind of immortality that he was looking for, and he indeed gained the immortality, but he didn't get to maintain his former self. He actually transformed into this golem, and so now he's kind of like a witless kind of creature bound to the magic of this chamber, and he's kind of stuck there, and he will kill anyone who kind of gets in the way. And what I was going to have it is that there's an artifact in that room that your players had to get to kind of help a noble either resurrect their person or whatever the mission might be. And so there's this artifact, and Daedrus has that artifact. And so defeating them and then looking for the artifact either in that room or in the next room, which is the treasure room. So there needs to be a reason why they're going in there. And then what I'll end up doing is I'll add in the walls, the pillars. We're going to add in a glowing stone, which might be the same thing as the Daedrus golem. I'm not sure yet. We'll figure that out. And I also want to have the room be a little bit more intimidating and a little bit more challenging. So I'll probably have some tentacles coming out of the walls so that your players are kind of forced to be more mindful of their environment. They should already be sharply tuned to the danger of wall traps after going through that gauntlet. And so they should be primed for a battle like this. They should be ready. They know that they're going to be trapped in an area. The walls are dangerous. They get too close, they're going to get wrapped up in a tentacle. So I think this is kind of some good elements to add into it. So let's kind of start with making the room itself, putting it together. I kind of overall like these kind of pillars right here. And so I'll kind of use them to act as kind of the face that I'm going to be working with. So we'll put some here, one right here. Let's put another one right here. This is going to act as the wall. And then what I might want to end up doing is maybe throw in a couple statues. Like we already had a statue in here, right here. So let's keep with the continuity by adding other statues like in here, like this, to kind of represent the back part of the wall. It's a boss room, so what I want to do is I kind of want to have the room be somewhat imposing, right? Isn't that the kind of the idea, is you want this kind of imposing room with lots of interesting architectural elements, maybe some statues, because you're dealing with a boss, right? And so when you're dealing with a boss room, you kind of want it to be a memorable room. You want it to have interesting architecture. You want it to kind of pop out and be more unique. So we'll start with this as being that part of the wall. And then what we can do is we can add in some other elements, like maybe we can take this same pillar right here and then maybe add some at the entrance right here. And then maybe we can follow that same trick we did with the clipping mask, right? We took a clipping mask and then we put it on top like this. Let's do that same concept. So we'll take this. We're going to use the clipping mask. I'm going to use the shape. I want to choose where I want the pillar to be cut off. So I'll kind of pick here, here, and then I'll go ahead and just hide it. Plus, now I've hidden it, and then I can do that same thing. I'm going to turn the blur off, so that way I get a straight line. Copy, paste, do it again, right here like this, and then I'll create that black piece, right? So I'll go in and I'll do it again. Make sure that that black is up on the right layer. I'll push it up, and then I'll go in like this. Okay, I think what about there? Press enter, plus, and then I'll take that same one, copy, paste, and then put it right on top right here. And so now I have these cut off pillars that are not blocking the maneuverability of the players, and yet it still adds some overlap because I do want the pillars to kind of show up. It kind of adds a sense of height to the room when I have these pieces. Let's go ahead and put one here, and then what I'll end up doing is probably copy and paste all these pieces and put them right here if I can. It looks like it doesn't really work like that, so I'll have to remove that. I think we'll put one there like that. And then, what I might want to do is have some of them be rotated in different directions a little bit to kind of show that they are kind of moving a little bit. So there we go. And then I think what we'll also do is we'll add in a ruin of some kind. I think this one should work just fine right here, like that. Okay, let's go like this. Let's bring the saturation down. Let's bring the brightness down. I'm going to make sure that I kind of got this right. I think what about there looks good. Let's also flatten it to the FG layer. And then I'm going to do some editing with it. So I'll take this. I'm going to flatten to the FG layer. Now it's kind of there and kind of put together. And now I can go in and I can kind of erase the spots that I don't need. So I can go in, take this, and I can just kind of erase the spots that I don't need. Let's go ahead and use a circle brush instead of this. And I'm going to turn the softness all the way off, and I can kind of fine tune some of the things that I'm erasing in here. Here we go. Okay. And so now we kind of have this nice entrance right here. And I can also remove the shadows. So I'm going to do that as well. Remove some of these shadows. I don't need them. Okay, there we go. And now I still have some of that there and available. There we go. And then what I might want to also consider doing is maybe throwing something, something on the ground that's more unique. You know, it is the boss room. So what we might want to do is maybe use something from Fantasy Battle Maps, like maybe from, I've already used a summoning circle from this style for the first room. So maybe I can take something like this. I'm going to put it down here like this. And then maybe I can use this. Put this in the center of the room. Let's turn the shadow off. Let's also bring the saturation down. Brightness, we'll bring the contrast down. I think about that size looks good. Let me just see where it's at. And then I can go and flatten it to the FG layer. There we go. And now we have this nice kind of circular formation that's here. And then let's go ahead and add in some rubble. Like this is a ruin right here. Where did those ruined walls come from? Where did they go? So I'll go ahead and throw some rubble right here like this. And then I'll put some other rubble up against this one right here maybe. Kind of like that. And then let's put some more rubble. Let's put one right here like this. And the rubble is going to be helpful because it's also something your players can interact with, right? They can pick up a stone. They can throw it at enemies. They can climb up on top of it, then do a slash coming down. Whatever it is, they take the high road, the advantage, whatever it might be. So I'll throw that stuff in, and then I'm also going to throw in maybe some collapsed rubble stuff as well. So I'm going to take this rubble right here. Take this. Let's use this one, and then I can kind of place it maybe over here in this section. Right over there. Should be kind of an open space. Okay, and then let's go ahead and use that rubble texture. Oopsie, I just realized I gotta have the softness up. There we go. I'm gonna go ahead and place that. Don't forget that you flattened the, I flattened that ruin to the FG layer, so I can paint over it, so I should be careful. So what I'll end up doing is just kind of adding the rubble here and there, just to give it that brown, warm colors that we kind of had. And then maybe I want to add something else to the room to kind of give it like maybe this necrotic-like energy or whatever. So what I could do is I could use this lava cracks right here and change the color to maybe like a greenish color. Let's maybe change the scale a little bit, and then I'll go ahead and carefully paint around the thing, these kind of like green light color, like this. Push those green light color. It could be purple, it could be whatever color you want, it doesn't really matter. And then on top of that, I want to have those sections be glowing. So then I'll also take a light source, and I'm going to put it right on top of it. And I'm going to change the hue to green. There we go. And then what I'll end up doing is just kind of bring the opacity down a little bit. Then I can get some of that nice green glow. Let me make sure that I get the right green. I think about there looks good. And then wherever there is that little crack, I'll go ahead and throw a light source. And the bigger the crack, the bigger the light stamp. So big crack. There we go. And a little crack right here. And now you kind of have some of that. The other thing that you can kind of do is we can use some light sources, like there's light coming out of the ground. So we could also go over to Sci-Fi Battle Maps. There should be a stamp called Light. This one right here works just fine. I'm going to place it down, but I'm going to also change that color. Let's also change the blend mode to normal so I can kind of see the color better. And then I can go to hue and then try to look for that green. There we go. And then I'm going to go ahead and just place it right where the cracks are, where the crack is open. So it looks like there's light kind of coming out of these cracks. There we go. Okay, yeah, that's good. All right, so now we have some kind of light coming out of those cracks, and the room overall kind of has this kind of creepy feel to it. One thing that I can also do that really helps is to take a big light source, a big green one, and just place it all on top of the whole room like this. So the whole room is kind of bathing in this kind of green light. And then I can go with the blend modes and kind of change through the blend modes to see if I can get a little bit more interesting effect with the room. So I'll go through it, soft light, hard light. We could use color. It will add like a whole greenish kind of color to the whole thing. So I could do that. Let's push that over to here. Make sure that I get that full kind of green color. Let me zoom in and make sure that I got it right. Yeah, I think the green is kind of showing up here. The other thing I could do is also use the same light sources that I did for this statue. Copy, paste it, and then put them on these statues down here as well. So what I'll do is I'll create group, and I'm going to flip them. And I should be able to place them right there where the eyeballs are. Copy, paste. Put another one right here. Let's just take a step back and look at it. Great. Okay, so we have some of that light in there. We have things that your players can interact with. We have that light in the ground. So this definitely has kind of like this necrotic, evil kind of feel to it. So it kind of works together. Okay, hey, thanks, first time chatter. Hi, Belle. Appreciate it. Okay, yeah, we're almost done, actually. We've gone 13 minutes over our normal amount of time. I'm going to quickly save, and then we're going to finish these last two rooms. Thankfully, these last two rooms are really small. Basically, what's going to happen in here is that your players are going to undergo a series of phases in a battle. So what I normally make a boss battle within, like fighting a main boss or a bad guy in any of the combat, what I'll end up doing is I try to make the battle more intriguing than basic combat. We just go in and smash, you know, with your weapon or your shield. I like to have a mix of environmental dangers, minions, and the main boss. This gives your players a variety in the combat. So what we'll probably have here is that there'll probably be some minions that will come out of the ground and then try to grab your feet. If you want it to be easy minions, just have them only just be hands that you can just kick, bash with a sword. But it's one thing, a part of the environment. It's going to kind of try to keep you from try to limit your mobility. The other thing is the other environmental dangers, like maybe there's like geysers of necrotic steam or something that comes out of the cracks. And so if you're not too close to it, what you can do is you can try to narrate that the fissure next to you is starting to bubble and boil, and you can kind of hear it. And that's perfect. It's something that you can avoid being hit with that, but you can also take an enemy and push them into that where that steam is going to come out, and it'll probably damage the creatures that you're fighting. So it's a mix between minions, environmental factors, and then of course the main boss themselves. And so I usually add all of these elements so that way it's not just you whacking away at all of these, just whacking away at this main boss. I feel it's kind of important. I'm also going to add in some of these circles here. I kind of want to show that this room is vaulted as well. So I'll kind of add those there. There we go. Okay, so you have all those vaulted spaces. Okay, I think that overall looks good. So you kind of get the general idea on how I kind of approach combat when it comes to a large boss like that. Let's go into this next room here, and we'll go ahead and add in the clouds to show that the shadow, I usually add some kind of shadows to these small passageways. We'll make it look like it's not quite as dark. Let's put one here as well. A little dark chamber here. Okay, let's go to that next room. This is going to be like the treasure room, the vault. The vault is sealed by powerful glyphs. The room contains gold, magical trinkets, and a crystal sarcophagus filled with like liquid starlight. And then maybe within that kind of crystal sarcophagus is where maybe the artifact, or maybe that is the artifact itself that your players kind of came for to kind of used for this quest that they've been put on by a noble lord or the leader of a guild, whatever it might be. But be warned, if any of the treasure is taken outside of the vault's walls, a terrible curse known as the Hex of Regret is cast upon the transgressor. So this is where your players will be kind of put into a difficult decision where do they want to have to deal with the curse but also get all this treasure, or were they just going to leave it behind? So it kind of makes a difficult choice for your players to kind of work with. So, and they can totally take the treasure. I wouldn't have the curse just kind of kill people, but I would say that maybe the curse influences their combat ability, or it gets in the way of maybe their rolls for maybe some kind of skill check or whatever, something that's going to kind of get in the way of their ability to do things. And then that way each player has a choice, like, hey, do I want to take something, or am I going to try to avoid the Hex of Regret? So kind of an important thing to add in there. And then among the treasure is like Daedrus's massive blade, which still kind of burns with this kind of green latent power. So we'll be able to throw that in as well. So let's go ahead and just open up the treasure room here. I'm going to start with the walls, which is what I always do. I think I'll use a series of arches for that this time. So I think we'll go ahead and here. There should be, let me see here. I think I might have passed it. Oh, that's the new stuff. I'm excited about that, by the way. That's going to be fun. Let's go ahead and use these right here for my archways. And I'll put them right on here. The saturation, I'm going to put the opacity all the way up and bring the brightness down. I know, I'm excited for that stuff. Trust me. It's going to be cool. I'm excited. So let's go ahead and just create the wall part. So I'll create a wall right here. And I want to make sure that it doesn't kind of block the visibility of this chamber right here. When you walk through, it actually just kind of lines it so that way it doesn't get in the way. And I'll maybe push it a little bit more this way so it just doesn't get in the way. There we go. Copy, paste, put another one right here. I think that looks good. And then we'll put maybe something in that corner over there that might look good. And then I'll also use the shape tool to kind of remove some of the shadows, because those shadows just look weird there. So I'll go in and I'll choose shape, brush. I'll go like this, and I'm going to make sure the blur is on. I'm just going to go over it like this and make sure I can kind of remove those shadows. I don't really want them in there. There we go. When we do release the 2.0, you'll be able to remove shadows even easier, because you'll be able to erase parts of a stamp on a new object layer that you created. So this will be so much easier to make maps like this with the new 2.0 release. Just so much easier. So I'm really excited about that. Okay, let's also put something in the corner right here. I think that would be a nice little thing to add in there. You could add in like a statue, or you can add in like a fountain of revival. Maybe your players, after a long, difficult fight, they need healing, right? They're out of healing spells, they're out of all this stuff. And so one thing you can do is like add a little fountain right here in the back here, and your players can have the option to go in here and then kind of heal themselves because they've been dealing with some difficult stuff there. So we'll add this in the corner. Now we've got those walls there. Your players are going to go back into that fountain over there, and they're going to heal themselves. So that's kind of these healing waters. That will be helpful. And then also we'll probably throw some treasure on the ground. So I'll probably type in treasure. I think treasure. I think I know what treasure is. Let's type in treasure. Here we go, right here. This stuff will work just fine. I'm going to make sure the scale is right. I'm going to bring the brightness down. And what I want to do here is I don't want to have too much because it's just not a realistic thing. Like, that's why I added a curse to it. I mean, if you want to go Scrooge McDuck and make a giant vault of gold in it, that's fine. But, you know, normally you don't want to give your players like tens of thousands of gold, right, in just one run. And so that's why I've made some of the treasure cursed, so they could decide to take some of it or they could not. And so I think what I'll do is just add a little bit of treasure, and I'm not going to try to add in too much. So just kind of throw in a little bit of treasure here, a little bit of there. I don't want to go overboard with it. And then I'm also going to throw in some crates and barrels and stuff. And then these can kind of represent like treasure chests and stuff. I'll bring the brightness down, and I'm going to put maybe like the chests in between the pillars here so that you've got like a series of treasures and stuff inside of here. Maybe put some chests here, and I'll vary the size of the chests so they're not all the same size. Let's maybe add in a little crate right here. Let's add in maybe a barrel somewhere. Let's add in a barrel. Oop, those are all the crates. What about the barrels? There it is right there. Perfect. Let's bring the brightness down. Let's put a couple barrels in here. Don't forget to vary their size. Let's place one over here. There we go. Let's also, let's go take these right here and then make these gold as well. So what I'll end up doing is just bring the brightness down on these. I'm going to place them down like this. Let's put another one over here, and let's put another one maybe over here. And then what I'll do is I'll paint this coal within these more of a gold color. So what I'll end up doing is just going to the shape tool, brush, and I'm going to have to scale this up because the brush only gets so big with the room tool or the shape tool. And so you'll have to bring the scale up like this. And now my brush should be big enough to kind of fit on here. You might have to scale it up a little bit more. It's just something you do when you recolor a stamp, unfortunately. So I'll have to just bring the scale up even more. I'm going to make it nice and big. And then I'm going to choose a color. I'm going to choose a color that I kind of want to represent this goldish color. And then you change the blend mode to, take a guess, color, because you're recoloring. And then when I place this down on top, I'm going to turn these into kind of this goldish kind of color. But it may not be, I might need to bring the brightness up on these. Let me check that out real quick. Let me bring the brightness up. I think that's fine. So let's go in and just paint in the gold. So I'll go in like this. You just have to fine tune and be careful when you're adding it in so you don't actually turn the wood part gold. And don't worry about pure black. The gold doesn't, the color's not going to show up on pure black, but you can see here that there is gold now. And here like this within these carts. Really, we should have crates of gold, but this is what we're at. So one there, got the gold in there. Let's put one here. There we go. Okay, looks good. And one more, this one right here. Okay. All right, now those are done. I can kind of go in, and then I can kind of select all of it, create group, one of them, create group, another one, create group, another one, create, and then I can take all of them and then scale them down. There we go. Oopsie, I missed a spot right there. Okay. Let's see here. I think we can make these just a little bit smaller. I think that's fine. We'll put some gold right here. Let's put some gold over on this one, and then another one over here, just right where the gold piles are. And then finally, what we can also do is just put individual coin down as well, because right now you just see piles, but you know what? Piles don't always all nicely, coins don't all nicely come up into a pile, right? Some fall down, they drift off and away. And so we'll go to Fantasy Battle Maps, we'll type in a coin here, like this. I'm going to make sure the scale is right, I'm going to make sure the brightness is right, and I'm just going to randomly place them. And I think they're a little too dark. Let's make them just a little bit brighter. Want them to stick out just a little bit more. And then I'll just kind of place these individual coins like this around on the ground, like this. So just kind of single click, place them around in here like this. And then some other things we want to throw in is maybe some gems. So I can go type in just treasure. And there should be stuff like these gems right here. Throw in a couple gems. Throw them in a pile somewhere. There you go. So you have some gems in there. Perfect. And then don't forget to add in some necklaces. Add in some crowns. Let's throw in a crown right here. Let's make it a little bit bigger. And then maybe, let's see here. There was another one too. Maybe a goblet or two. These are kind of nice things to add in there. So we'll throw in a goblet there. One here. One in this corner. One over here. But there's also a gray one. Let's grab that one. So not all the same. There we go. Oh, let's move that one over to here. Okay, there we go. So now we kind of have this treasure room coming together. And what I'll do is I'll want to probably take a light source. And I want that fountain to kind of look like it's a magical fountain that kind of heals you. So I'll have to take a light source, put it just right over the fountain, and then change it to maybe a bluish color. So that way it makes it clear that this is kind of a special kind of fountain. And then also it kind of is complementary to this yellowish kind of color. Yellow or gold and blue kind of go well together, so that we've got that fountain there. One other thing I might want to do is maybe add in a fey light. So there's a nice fey light right here. And then I'll kind of place it down. And I'll kind of put that just right over the fountain itself to kind of make it look like there's kind of some magic going on with the fountain there. There we go. And then I think what I might also do is just take these goblets and just bring the brightness down. They seem a little too bright. There we go. And then I can also have it to where maybe I want the room to be flooded with that light. And so I can kind of put it down on top and then bring the opacity down. So I still get some of that glow. So that room is kind of filled with that glow. There we go. Let's go ahead and save it and add in that last room. And then we will be done with this one. I'll make sure to continue adding in the rest of the lore off screen, because that's kind of a time-consuming writing thing. But I'll add in more of the lore, I'll add in the notes or the journal entries, and then this map will be clonable, and then you guys can kind of use it, edit it, maneuver things around. And so for the ending, I probably could add a little bit more in here, but I think what I'll do is just going to wrap up that last room right there. Let's see here. Let's go ahead and read the note for it, and then we're going to build it. Let's get going. So this is the exit, a cracked stone portal that opens only once the boss is defeated and the seal is lifted. So fleeing before finishing the dungeon causes the entire place to kind of shift and kind of possibly rearrange, kind of a Harry Potter staircase situation. Possibly trapping the adventurers within. Maybe not forever, but trapping them so that they have to find a way to get out. And only those who conquer Daedrus' legacy may leave. So only by defeating the boss can you actually be able to leave the room. You might be able to run out of the room and then get to the treasure room, but you won't be able to actually access the portal to get out. So defeating the boss is important. So what we'll end up doing is we'll go back to Fantasy Regional. It mentioned that there was some kind of portal. So let's type a broken arch, I remember. And there should be this broken arch right here. This one will work perfect. Let's put it up against this wall right here like that. That'll work out great. Let's go ahead and get the saturation down. And then right inside of that portal will get you out. And what we can do is maybe we want to use like a light source to to kind of represent where the portal is. So I'll go ahead and take this, turn that light off. Let's go to normal blend mode. Here we go. And I'm just going to put it right behind there. And then I'm also going to put one in the front as well. Kind of like this. There we go. Let's go right about there. Let's put another one right in here. Let's put a couple lining that edge right here. That way we can really show that there's some light coming out of that portal. And then I'll put one more right here like that. Change it back to overlay. And now I have this kind of green portal that kind of leads out of the dungeon. And what we want to do is maybe add in some elements. So let's go ahead and maybe use these stalactites. Let's stick with the theme that we used from the entrance or the vestibule and kind of get a similar theme here. So let's go ahead and add in these kind of stalactites. Let's see here. Let's add another one right here. Let's add even a smaller one right here like this. I don't want to block too much. Let's put one right here. I think that should look good. Let's put one in this corner right here without blocking too much. Put one here. Let's see here. The other thing that we might want to do is maybe add something on the floor to make it more interesting. Like we could add some kind of circle or some kind of element on the ground. One thing we could do is, actually let's go back to Fantasy Regional. We could use one of these. Let me see, where is it? There should be a fountain in here, one of these right here. And instead of making it a fountain, we'll make it a part of the floor design instead. So what we'll do is we'll just desaturate. I'm going to bring it down a layer. I'm going to bring the brightness down. I'm going to bring the contrast down. And I kind of want to make this kind of unique kind of floor design that kind of goes in right before you can leave. So I could put it up like this, up against the whole thing like that. I think that looks good. Okay, let's add that. So you kind of have a way to kind of get in right there. And then what we could do is, we've also got some pillars in here. Let's maybe take a pillar and make it look like it fell down in here. And this can also act as like a wall kind of thing. So a pillar fell down from this corner like this. That can kind of act as like an element there. And let's also use that same kind of Fey element, and let's kind of put it like right here. And I'm going to change that hue, of course. There we go. There we go. That looks a little better. Not coming out of that door there. Let's bring the brightness down a little bit more on the arch. Okay, I think that overall kind of gets a good entrance. I am going to throw in just a couple more pages for the journal. I wanted to put like a page over here, and then another page over here in the gauntlet, another page right before the boss, and then maybe a couple pages kind of floating around inside of here. So that way we can kind of figure it out, and then we'll add in maybe a note in here somewhere, and then maybe a couple notes at the exit, I think. There we go. Let's take a step back and kind of just overall look at it and see how it went. I think overall I'm kind of pleased with how it went. I might want to consider adding in a couple more clouds in certain areas, like maybe put some cloud, maybe, let's see here, where is my clouds? Did I grab it? Let's double check here. There we go, okay. Let's put some clouds like over here, bring the opacity down, and I want to show a little bit of depth up here because it's furthest away from the light. So I'll put a little bit of shadow right here. Let's also put some shadow right in this corner, over here, one right here. There's not a lot of whole light right here, so let's put some shadows right there. Okay, let's take a look here. Overall, I'm kind of pleased with this. Let's make it a little bit darker right there. And I think overall, we're getting the kind of shadows down. Let's put in a little bit more shadow work over here because the light. There we go. I think that looks good. Let's take a step back and just look at it. So every room is kind of unique. We have that vestibule, a puzzle room, no combat whatsoever. And then we go into here with a much larger combat with all the various spiders, the hallways with traps that can be used to your advantage if you're being chased by these arachnids. The next room is a room for rest. After you've defeated all the arachnids, you have this room of rest. It's more focused on pushing the narrative forward. Then there's a creature that's you're gonna save from out of the well. and they're going to chase them into this dark room where you're going to go into, maybe the challenge isn't the combat, but it's doing the combat in the dark. And so that will make it a little bit more difficult, but also not make it as quite as difficult as that spider challenge. And then they'll go into the Gauntlet, where most of the challenges is going to be environmental. You're trying to avoid the traps. And if some enemies were chasing behind your players, you could use them as a surfboard or a shield to block the traps. After you finish the Gauntlet, then you go into the main boss room here, where you'll fight Daedrus, and then the minions, and then on top of the environmental dangers like those spewing geysers that can do damage to yourself, or even damage Daedrus themselves if you time it correctly. So always throwing in environmental dangers. And then, of course, the victory. Once you've defeated Daedrus, you get to either take some of the treasure or find the artifact that you were paid to find if it's in this room, heal from that healing fountain over there, and then you'll move your way into the exit chamber, which is, again, somewhat resembles the entrance. And then they're on their way out of the dungeon. So, hey, that's it. That is pretty much how it kind of worked out. Again, Daedrus themselves, messed around too much with these unnatural forces, and it basically contorted him and then turned him into this kind of evil golem that kind of guards this space. So that was kind of the overall general theme. And remember, we were able to drive the narrative forward using those notes or journal entries on each room and hallway that kind of push the player forward. So I'll be sure to finish the rest of this stuff off screen. That means not details, but mostly the lore. I'll add in the remaining journal entries and all that stuff. And then I'll be sure to include this link so that you guys can clone and edit and use it for yourselves. Okay. All right. So thanks so much, everyone, for watching. It was a little bit longer stream, so I appreciate you sticking through it. And I will see you on Friday for our creating an I think it's an epic mountain city. I think it's episode 8, so we're going to be finishing it. We're going to be adding in some docks. So we've got a lot of cool stuff coming up. Thank you, Commander Bond. All right, thanks, everybody. You guys have been awesome. Please stay safe and healthy and merry map making, okay? I'll talk to you later. Bye.